the producers asked us for a script on a hard date, Mr. Akkad, because the strike was coming.
Yeah, so you had to get
Al
it written
had to do
before
it
that.
in 13 days.
That's pretty fast.
And that's, as you know,
Yes.
for a screenplay, that's extremely fast.
Yes.
So we tag teamed it. It's interesting to see the maze, because what is reminded to me is how each gag in the movie, it each has a story base.
Yeah.
So nothing was just an arbitrary kill. It was like for a reason to push the story forward.
Like what happens in the service station. The
Yeah,
reason Michael kills those guys is he needs his clothes.
Yeah, and the reason he goes into the drugstore is he needs to get the mask. And also Jamie needs to get her clown suit.
Yes.
And Bucky needs to die so that the power can go down. And so everything is very carefully organized for story, but it created these interesting set pieces.
When the opening titles are something that is, the fans really, to this day, still talk about the opening title sequence as being something that's, extremely atmospheric, but perfectly captures like that creepy mood of Halloween and fall. How did you shoot that? Did you just go out on location?
Come from my little brain, because I was finally working on the script, and I just realized to myself, asking the question, what is Halloween? I didn't really know.
Yeah.
Like, what is Halloween? So before Google, we went back and we went to the library and looked up and found out it was this
harvest
agrarian end of the harvest where they had to hold on for 4 months of darkness. And a lot of these totems were put in the field to protect. So we were looking at these images and suddenly realized that Halloween is not just a holiday for candy. It comes from a very real place.
Yeah, it comes from a pagan place, actually.
That's right.
All the way back to Ireland.
Yeah,
originally.
way back. Well,
Yeah.
that's where a lot of
Pagan
people
harvest
were
festivals,
from.
yeah.
So we were seeing haystacks and pitchforks and scarecrows, and we were seeing all these things. And then we went outside of Salt Lake, and it was still spring, which could double for fall, and we were able to recreate these odd images from pagan Halloween. And I do think it gave the movie a kind of eerie feeling.
We definitely latched on to that. As soon as, going back and watching the film again, I immediately picked up on that opening title sequence, and I've made references to it as you're going through the maze. When you leave the diner and you go out onto the Haddonfield on Halloween night, all the decorations that you're seeing, they're evocative of your opening title sequence from the movie.
It's just interesting to be in these environments because the Halloween 4, we needed to get Michael out of the sanitarium.
Yeah.
So how do you do that believably? Well, the only way to do it is in a prison transfer.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no other way you're going to break in and get him out. So knowing we had to do a prison transfer, that forces him into the ambulance. And so, well, how do you get out of an ambulance?
Kill the people who are in the ambulance,
right.
yeah.
And so how do you do that in a way we haven't seen before? And there was a very simple gag, the famous thumb, which a lot of people talk about. And it's like it's like a retractable sword or a retractable knife. It's an old movie gag where the thumb recedes into the prosthetic of the hand.
Yes.
But it's so simple that it's very effective. So when you're looking at it, you see the thumb go into the guy's forehead, and people, this is like 8 minutes into the movie, were screaming because they've seen a lot, but they hadn't seen that.
Yeah.
And it was shocking. And also interesting, before CGI and all this stuff, it was just very, very simple.
One of the things we love about a movie like Halloween 4 is it's pre-CGI, it's pre-computer animation, so it's all practical effects, which in our world, that's all we deal with. We can't we're live experience. We can't do computer animation in the middle of a scene.
Right.
So we're constantly having to, in a lot of ways in modern films, we're looking at something that's computer illusion and trying to figure out how to make it a practical effect. But when we're dealing with a movie that was pre-CGI or pre-Jurassic Park, it's already practical effects. So for us, I always think of us as like the torchbearers of practical effects, because all of our makeup people are constantly doing practical effects for Horror Nights.
It's very grounded. We had a sequence, as you know, on a roof, which, if you look at the actual house, the gutter would have been almost 30 feet off the ground, and then if you add the peak of the roof, you're talking about 40, 45
Yeah.
feet off the ground, which is very scary. We couldn't fake it, so we built the roof on the ground.
Yeah.
So even there, the peak was still 14 feet above the field. We just found a field and built the roof, and surrounded everybody with stuntmen. So when Ellie and Danielle are going up that slippery roof, if they fell, which they did, within a second there was somebody right off camera to just grab them. But even on the ground, even with the stunt guys, it was still very precarious.
Okay, 1988. That's when Halloween 4 came out. I was in college. I remember going to
Nice.
see it in the movie theater. How does it feel 30 years later to see your film be memorialized in an event like Halloween Horror Nights, where all of these people that work on this are trying to hit every little detail from your film? That must be very surreal.
It is, and I will say, just blowing my own horn a little bit, I have like over 100 director credits in movies and television. And yet, this movie
Yeah.
that we finished 30 years ago,
That you shot really fast.
that fast, by the time we were done, we were exhausted, and we thought, well, that's that. And here it is, living, breathing, engaging an audience. I don't think there's another film or television show that I've done that's had this life. It plays, as you know, every Halloween. They play it on television, which so new generations see it all the time.
I always think that, a lot of the credit for keeping a film like that alive is the horror fans, the horror community in general. Don't you think that they end up being the people that, they love the films they love so much that they refuse to let it die or be forgotten?
I think that's part of it. I think it's also generational. I think, fathers or mothers, they show it to their kids. I loved this movie when I was a kid, and then the kid sees it. And then, of course, with all the efforts that Trancas has made, they've made subsequent movies. So every few years, there's another installment, which keeps it alive.
Yeah. Well, Michael is the classic horror movie character. There's just the idea of the mask alone, that kind of blank, white, emotionless face.
You can't see his eyes.
Yeah, you can't see his eyes, and the face betrays no emotion,
Well, Alan and I discussed over and over again, who is Michael Myers? Who is he? And finally, Alan just said in the room, as we were talking, he said, he's evil on two legs.
Yeah.
And so we just had, because we didn't know what the answer was, so we just had Loomis say it. He's evil on two legs. And that somehow just put a button on that, and it was enough. And everybody accepted it and understood it. But I think it really is, you can't see his eyes. That's a big part of it.
Because the eyes are the mirror to the soul.
there's
and if
nothing
you can't
there.
see the soul, maybe there is no soul.
Right. You don't know what he's going to do. You don't know what he wants. You don't know what his agenda is.
You just know he's relentless and he's not going to stop,